The text message glowed on my phone screen like a burning bridge. "You're not welcome here anymore. Don't come to Sunday dinner. Your choices have embarrassed this family enough." I sat in my private office on the 50th floor of the Anderson Tower, no relation to my family name, though that irony would soon become delicious, looking out over the Manhattan skyline. Below, tiny figures hustled through the early December chill, unaware that one of the biggest corporate takeovers in recent history was about to unfold. My father's text wasn't surprising. Last night's family dinner had been the final straw. The moment I refused to accept a rescue package position at Anderson Global, their precious family company. A company that, unknown to them, was already mine. "You're throwing your life away," Dad had shouted, his face red with rage, sterling silverware rattling as his fist hit the mahogany dining table. 10 years of wandering around doing God knows what, and now you refuse a VP position handed to you on a silver platter? Mom had dabbed her eyes with an embroidered napkin, ever the perfect picture of maternal disappointment. "Michael darling, we just want what's best for you. You're 35, unmarried, and what do you have to show for it? At least with Anderson Global you'd have stability, respect." They only knew. The wandering years they lamented had been spent building Shadow Peak Ventures, now one of the most powerful private equity firms in the world. We operated in absolute secrecy, using layers of shell companies and private holdings. Our acquisitions were swift, silent, and absolute. And Anderson Global? I'd been buying their shares through various fronts for the past 3 years. Last week we'd finally secured the controlling interest. The board meeting scheduled for Monday would announce the new ownership and the complete restructuring of the company. My phone buzzed again. Another text from Dad. "Your mother's crying. I hope you're happy with yourself. Some son you turned out to be." I smiled, remembering all the family dinners over the years. The constant comparisons to my cousins who took respectable corporate jobs. The thinly veiled disappointment when I left my junior position at a prestigious firm to find myself. The whispers about how the Anderson name was being wasted on me. "Mr. Anderson?" My assistant's voice came through the intercom. "The board packets for Monday have been prepared. Would you like to review them?" "Bring them in, Jessica." She entered, carrying a stack of leather portfolios. Each contained the detailed restructuring plan for Anderson Global, including the new organizational chart. My parents' names were notably absent from the executive level. "The press release is ready too," Jessica added. "We'll distribute it Monday at 9 a.m., right as the board meeting begins." I opened one of the portfolios, admiring the clean lines of the new company logo. Shadow Peak's acquisition of Anderson Global would be our first public move, our emergence from the shadows. The business world would finally know who we were, and my parents would finally understand what their wayward son had built. A notification popped up on my computer. Dad had just sent a company-wide email announcing an emergency board meeting for Monday morning. The subject line read, "Critical announcement, attendance mandatory." He had no idea he'd just invited me to my own coronation. My phone rang. It was my younger sister Emma, the only family member who knew the truth. She'd kept my secret for years, watching our parents' treatment of me with growing disgust. "They're really done it this time, haven't they?" she said when I answered. "Mom just called, crying about how you've rejected the family legacy and thrown away your last chance." "How dramatic of her," I replied, scanning the restructuring documents. "Will you be at the board meeting Monday?" "Wouldn't miss it for the world," Emma laughed. "I've already planned my outfit for when their worlds implode. But Michael, are you sure about this? It's going to destroy them." I thought back to every dismissive comment, every comparison to more successful relatives, every lecture about responsibility and family legacy. I remembered Dad's words from my college graduation. "The business world will eat you alive, son. You don't have what it takes." "They destroyed themselves, I said quietly. They were so busy mourning the son they wanted that they never saw who I actually was. Monday just makes it official. My computer pinged with another email, the final confirmation from our lawyers. Shadow Peak Ventures now officially owned 51% of Anderson Global's shares. The company my grandfather had built, that my father had grown, and that they'd never thought I was worthy of, was mine. I pulled up the morning's financial reports. Anderson Global's stock had been declining steadily for years under my father's outdated leadership. Their market share was shrinking, their technology lagging decades behind. The company needed a complete overhaul. Exactly what Shadow Peak specialized in. Jessica, I called through the intercom. Please make sure my suit for Monday is ready. The charcoal Tom Ford. The one we had tailored last week? Already done, sir. And the car will be ready at 8 a.m. Monday to take you to Anderson Global Headquarters. I looked at the family photo on my desk, taken 10 years ago, right before I left to start my own path. Dad stood proud in his Anderson Global CEO pose, Mom perfectly coiffed beside him. They looked so certain of their world, so secure in their assumptions about success and failure. Monday would change everything. My phone buzzed one final time. Mom, we only wanted what was best for you. One day you'll understand that running away from responsibility isn't the answer. I placed the phone face down, turning to watch the sunset paint Manhattan in shades of gold. In my reflection on the window, I saw not the failure my parents imagined, but the architect of their company's future. Monday couldn't come soon enough. Monday morning arrived with the weight of destiny. I stood in my penthouse dressing room, adjusting my Tom Ford tie, a subtle power move as it cost more than my father's entire wardrobe. The news channels buzzed in the background, financial analysts speculating about the mysterious trading activity around Anderson Global's stock. Shadow Peak Ventures remains the market's greatest enigma, a CNBC analyst was saying. Their acquisitions are legendary, but nobody knows who runs it. Today's Anderson Global board meeting has sparked rumors of another major takeover. My phone lit up with messages from board members, old friends of my father mostly, all desperately trying to understand why their secure shares had been quietly transferred to unknown entities over the past 3 years. None of them had bothered to look closely at the shell companies and holding firms I'd created. They were too comfortable, too certain of their position. Just like my parents. Emma called as I was getting into the car. Mom and Dad are already at the office, she reported. Dad's practically having a meltdown. They've discovered that most of the board members have sold their shares to unknown parties. He's called in every lawyer and financial advisor he knows. How's Mom taking it? I asked, watching the city scroll past my tinted windows. Oh, she's in full crisis mode. Called me at dawn asking if I knew anything about corporate raiders or hostile takeovers. The irony of her asking her children who know nothing about business for help is just. Emma's laugh was sharp and satisfied. The car pulled up to Anderson Global's headquarters, a dated building that desperately needed modernization, like everything else about my father's company. Security guards nodded respectfully, not recognizing me as the band's son but seeing only a powerful-looking executive in a perfect suit. In the elevator I checked my watch. 8:45 a.m. In 15 minutes the press release would go live, and Shadow Peak's ownership of Anderson Global would become public knowledge. But first I had a board meeting to attend. I could hear the chaos before I reached the boardroom. Raised voices, shuffling papers, the distinctive sound of my father's authoritative tone trying to maintain control of a situation already far beyond his grasp. We need to identify these shareholders immediately, he was saying as I approached. Anderson Global has been a family company for 3 generations. We can't let some corporate raider. I opened the boardroom doors. The conversation died instantly. 20 faces turned to stare at me, board members, executives, lawyers and my parents, all seated at the massive mahogany table that had witnessed decades of my father's reign. Michael. Mom's voice was barely a whisper. What are you doing here? This is a private board meeting. Actually, I said, walking to the head of the table, my father's usual seat. I have every right to be here. In fact, I called this meeting. Dad stood up, his face flushing. This is ridiculous. Security. Sit down, Dad, I said quietly, placing my briefcase on the table. You'll want to hear this. The room's screens lit up simultaneously, displaying Shadow Peak's logo. Right on schedule, my phone buzzed with notifications. The press release was live. Ladies and gentlemen, I began, enjoying the growing horror on my father's face. As of 9 a.m. this morning, Shadow Peak Ventures owns a controlling interest in Anderson Global. As founder and CEO of Shadow Peak, I'm here to discuss the company's new direction. The silence was absolute. I could actually hear my mother's pearl necklace click against the table as she slumped forward. You're Shadow Peak? Dad's voice cracked. That's impossible. Shadow Peak is a multi-billion-dollar. He stopped, understanding finally dawning. Indeed, I smiled, opening my briefcase. Those wandering years you so often criticized? I was building one of the most successful private equity firms in the world. While you were telling everyone I was finding myself, I was orchestrating acquisitions larger than Anderson Global's entire market cap. I distributed the restructuring documents. You'll find your retirement packages on page 3. They're quite generous. I'm not completely heartless. Though considering how you've treated me for the past decade, perhaps I should be. Dad's hands shook as he flipped through the papers. This is a joke. It has to be a joke. The same joke that acquired Pacific Industries last year? Or maybe you mean the Thompson Group takeover. I leaned forward. Oh wait. You called those masterful business moves at last month's dinner, didn't you? Right before telling me I wouldn't understand such complex transactions. Board members were whispering among themselves, some already reaching for their phones to call their brokers. They could see the writing on the wall, Anderson Global, as they knew it was over. Michael, Mom tried, tears streaming down her face. We're your parents. You can't just... Can't what, Mom? Succeed beyond your narrow definition of success? Build something bigger than Dad's precious family company? Or do you mean I can't fire you? Because actually I can do all of those things. I stood up, buttoning my jacket. The press conference is in an hour. New management team takes over this afternoon. Don't worry, your personal belongings will be packed and delivered to your homes. You'll regret this, Dad said, but his voice held no power anymore. The board won't stand for it. The board. I laughed. Look around, Dad. They've already accepted their severance packages. While you were talking, they were signing their resignation letters. He looked around the table, seeing former allies already walking toward the door, their loyalty worth exactly the price of their golden parachutes. One more thing, I added, turning back at the door. About Sunday dinner. I'm afraid I'll have to cancel. I have a company to run. The next 24 hours transformed Anderson Global, and my family, forever. The press conference exploded across financial media. Shadow Peak Ventures reveals mysterious founder in stunning Anderson Global takeover. CNBC ran special segments on the hidden billionaire, who built an empire in secret. Wall Street Journal's headline read, Prodigal Son Returns, the greatest corporate sleight of hand in decades. I watched the chaos unfold from my new office, formerly my father's sanctuary for 30 years. The modern furniture and technology I'd ordered were being installed, erasing decades of outdated luxury. The oil painting of my grandfather that had hung behind the desk was being replaced with a digital art wall. The old making way for the new in every sense. Emma arrived around noon, carrying a bottle of champagne and wearing a triumphant smile. Well, dear brother, you've certainly outdone yourself. Have you seen social media? Mom's country club friends are having collective meltdowns. All those years they spent pitying her for having such a disappointing son. How are they taking it? I asked, though I could guess. Dad's locked himself in his study. Mom's been calling everyone she knows, trying to explain how she always believed in you and supported your dreams. Emma rolled her eyes, pouring champagne into crystal glasses. The cognitive dissonance is astounding. My phone buzzed, a text from Mom. Please, Michael. We need to talk. We're still family. Family. The word had been a weapon they'd wielded against me for years. Family obligation. Family legacy. Family disappointment. Mr. Anderson, my assistant interrupted through the intercom. Your parents are in the lobby demanding to see you. Security would like instructions. I considered for a moment. Send them up. It's time to finish this. They arrived looking like ghosts of their former selves. Dad's perfectly pressed suits and Mom's designer outfits couldn't hide their shattered confidence. They stood in my new office, surrounded by the physical manifestation of their failed assumptions. 10 minutes, I said, not offering them seats. That's all I can spare between transforming your failed company into something profitable. Failed company? Dad's face reddened. I built this. Into a dinosaur. I cut him off. Your technology is obsolete. Your management structure is from the 1980s. You've lost market share every quarter for 5 years. The only thing keeping your stock price up was my quiet acquisition of shares. Mom stepped forward, tears ready. Darling, we only wanted what's best for me. Oh, you wanted what was best for your image. The perfect son in the perfect position following the perfect path. Did you ever even once ask what I wanted? We gave you everything. Dad exploded. Private schools, connections, opportunities. You gave me everything except respect, I replied calmly. Every success I had that didn't fit your narrative was dismissed. Every achievement that didn't match your plan was ignored. So I stopped telling you about them. I pulled up financial documents on the wall screen. Shadow Peak Ventures. Founded 7 years ago. Current value, $12.8 billion. Portfolio companies in technology, healthcare, real estate. Operations in 12 countries. All built while you were telling people I was finding myself. They stared at the numbers, the empire their failure son had built. The night you told me I'd never understand real business? I continued. I had just closed a $3 billion acquisition. When you offered me that insulting VP position. I owned companies bigger than Anderson Global. Every dinner where you compared me to my successful cousins, I was making moves that will be taught in business schools. Why didn't you tell us? Mom whispered. Would you have believed me? Or would you have tried to take control like you did with everything else in my life? Standing before the mahogany doors of my family's Victorian mansion, I clutched Grandma Rose's final letter in my coat pocket like a shield. The Christmas wreaths and twinkling lights seemed to mock the heaviness in my heart. This would be our first Christmas without her, and only I knew the bombshell that was about to drop. I'm Catherine Mitchell, though my family barely acknowledges my existence beyond calling me Kate when they need something. At 32, I'm the middle child caught between my older sister Elizabeth, the successful corporate lawyer, and my younger brother Michael, the genius surgeon. Meanwhile, I chose to become a conservationist working to protect endangered species. A career path that my family deemed worthless, just like me. The door swung open before I could knock. You're late, my mother said sharply, her critical eyes scanning my outfit. I'd worn a simple green dress, expensive but understated, bought with my own money. Not that she'd notice or care. Merry Christmas to you too, Mom, I replied, stepping into the warmth of the house. The familiar scent of pine and cinnamon did nothing to ease the tension in my shoulders. The living room was a picture of holiday perfection, just like everything else in my mother's carefully curated world. A 12-foot Christmas tree dominated one corner, its ornaments arranged with military precision. Family photos lined the mantelpiece, mostly of Elizabeth and Michael. The few that included me were old, from before I'd disappointed them by choosing my own path. Katie, darling. Elizabeth's voice carried across the room, dripping with false sweetness. She air-kissed my cheek, careful not to smudge her perfect makeup. Still working with those animals? Conservation research, yes, I corrected her, though I knew it was pointless. We're making significant progress in. That's nice, she cut me off, already turning away. Mom, when are we opening presents? I can't wait to show everyone what Charles bought me. She flashed her enormous diamond ring, a reminder that she'd married into old money. Michael was sprawled on the leather sofa, barely looking up from his phone. Hey, he mumbled, his standard greeting for me these days. My father sat in his usual armchair, hidden behind a newspaper, probably avoiding any real interaction until dinner. Catherine. The familiar voice made me turn. Aunt Patricia, my mother's sister, stood by the fireplace, swirling a glass of wine. I heard about your little project getting rejected for funding again. Such a shame. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. She'd never forgiven me for being Grandma Rose's favorite. I bit back a retort. She had no idea that my little project had actually secured major international backing. Not that any of them had bothered to ask. Dinner's ready. Mom's voice rang out from the dining room. Everyone take your assigned seats. Of course there were assigned seats. Heaven forbid we disrupt her perfect seating arrangement. I found my place card at the far end of the table, as far from the family conversation as possible without actually being in another room. Elizabeth sat at my mother's right hand, her place of honor. She was already launching into a story about her latest court victory, though I noticed she left out the part about how her husband's connections had landed her the case. That's what real success looks like, Mom beamed. Not like some people who waste their time chasing pointless dreams. I felt the familiar sting of her words but kept my face neutral as I cut into my turkey. The letter in my pocket seemed to burn against my leg. Did you hear about Michael's promotion? Dad finally emerged from behind his newspaper. Youngest chief resident in the hospital's history. Actually, Michael smirked, they're making me department head next month. More praise erupted around the table. I pushed my peas around my plate, remembering all the times they'd dismissed my achievements. The international awards, the research breakthroughs, the conservation policies I'd helped implement, none of it mattered because it wasn't their definition of success. What about you, Kate? Aunt Patricia's voice cut through the celebration. Any news worth sharing? Found a real job yet? Before I could answer, Elizabeth jumped in. Oh, leave her alone, Aunt Pat. We all know Katie's not exactly career-oriented. At least she's not asking for money anymore. My hand tightened around my fork. They had no idea that I'd been quietly building my own success, managing the foundation Grandma Rose had entrusted to me. The same foundation that controlled most of their trust funds. Actually, Pi Research was just featured in. A disappointment, Mom interrupted, setting down her wine glass with more force than necessary. That's what you are, Catherine. A complete disappointment to this family. The table fell silent. Even Elizabeth looked uncomfortable. Do you know what people say about us? Mom continued, her voice rising. They ask why we let you waste your life playing with animals when you could have been something. Anything. Margaret, Dad warned, but she was on a roll. Look at your siblings. Elizabeth's making partner at her firm. Michael's revolutionizing surgical techniques. And you're nothing. Worthless. Michael snickered. Elizabeth tried to hide her smile behind her napkin. I sat there letting their laughter wash over me. They had no idea what was coming. No idea that Grandma Rose had seen through their materialism and cruelty years ago. Nothing to say for yourself? Aunt Patricia pressed, enjoying my apparent humiliation. I told Rose she was making a mistake, encouraging your ridiculous dreams. That was it. The final straw. I reached into my pocket and pulled out Grandma Rose's letter. The official seal of her law firm was still intact. Actually, I said, my voice steady, Grandma Rose left me a letter to read to all of you today. She was very specific about the timing. What are you talking about? Mom snapped. The will was read months ago. This isn't about the will, I replied, breaking the seal. This is about the Mitchell Family Foundation. The one that controls all of your trust funds. The color drained from Elizabeth's face. Even Michael put down his phone. What about the foundation? Dad asked, suddenly alert. I unfolded the letter, Grandma Rose's elegant handwriting clear and bold. To my family, I began reading. If you're hearing this letter, it means two things. First, that I'm no longer with you. And second, that you've failed the test I set for you. Test. Elizabeth interrupted. What test? I continued reading. I've watched for years as you've valued money and status over kindness and integrity. I've seen how you've treated my beloved Catherine, mocking her passion and dedication while praising shallow achievements and purchased success. Mom tried to speak, but I held up my hand, still reading. And so, I made a choice. 6 months ago, I appointed Catherine as the sole trustee of the Mitchell Family Foundation. She alone has the power to manage, distribute, or terminate all associated trust funds. The silence that followed was deafening. I looked up from the letter to see 6 shocked faces staring back at me. You're lying, Elizabeth whispered. I pulled out my phone and opened my banking app. Would you like to see the foundation's accounts? Or perhaps the trust fund balances I now control? This is ridiculous. Mom stood up, her chair scraping against the hardwood floor. Patricia, did you know about this? Aunt Patricia had gone very pale, no doubt remembering all the times she'd belittled me in front of Grandma Rose. She chose me, I said quietly, because I was the only one who understood that money doesn't equal worth. The only one who chose to make my own way instead of living off the family fortune. But what does this mean? Michael stammered. I stood up, carefully refolding Grandma's letter. It means, dear brother, that your comfortable trust fund lifestyle is now in my hands. All of your trust funds. Every last penny. The chaos that erupted after my announcement was exactly what you'd expect from people who just discovered their golden parachutes had holes in them. Elizabeth recovered first, her lawyer instincts kicking in. This can't be legal, she declared, pulling out her phone. I'm calling Charles's firm right now. Go ahead, I said calmly, taking a sip of water. The documents were ironclad. Grandma Rose made sure of that. You can't do this to us, Michael's voice cracked. I have payments. Commitments. Like that Ferrari you bought last month? I raised an eyebrow. Or the beach house you can't afford. Mom gripped the edge of the table, her knuckles white. Catherine and Mitchell, if you think for one moment that we'll let you destroy this family. Destroy the family? I cut her off with a bitter laugh. You mean like you've been trying to destroy me for the past decade? Every criticism, every dismissal, every time you called my work worthless. That was different, she protested weakly. Yes, it was. Because I never needed your money. I built my own career, earned my own success. But you. I gestured around the table. Look at yourselves. What have any of you actually achieved without Grandma's money smoothing the way? Elizabeth's face flushed red. I worked hard for everything I... Really? I interrupted. Did you work hard for the job at Charles's father's firm? The one you got right after the wedding? Or how about that partnership track they mysteriously fast-tracked you for? She fell silent and I turned to Michael. And you, brother dear? Shall we talk about how many strings Grandma pulled to get you into medical school after you failed the MCT twice? You vindictive little... Aunt Patricia started, but Dad held up his hand. Catherine, he said, his voice surprisingly calm. Let's discuss this rationally. What do you want? Finally, someone asked the right question. I pulled out another envelope from my pocket. Grandma Rose left instructions about that too. She called it the redemption clause. Of course she did, Elizabeth muttered. The trust funds will remain frozen, I announced, until each of you completes 3 conditions. Conditions? Mom's voice was sharp. We're your family, not your employees. First condition, I continued as if she hadn't spoken. Each of you will volunteer 100 hours at the conservation center where I work. No exceptions, no buying your way out of it. Manual labor? Elizabeth looked horrified. I'm a lawyer, I don't. Second condition, I spoke over her. You will each write a detailed letter of apology. Not to me but to Grandma Rose's memory. Explaining how you corrupted everything she valued about our family legacy. Michael snorted. This is ridiculous. And third, I met each of their eyes in turn, you will donate 20% of your trust fund to charitable causes of my choosing permanently. The uproar was immediate. Everyone started shouting at once, their voices overlapping in a symphony of entitlement and outrage. Enough. Dad's voice cut through the chaos. He turned to me, his expression unreadable. You're serious about this? Completely. I pulled up the Foundation's management app on my phone. In fact, I've already frozen all the accounts. Check your banking apps if you don't believe me. The sound of frantic phone tapping filled the room, followed by a series of gasps and curses. I can't access anything, Elizabeth whispered, her face pale. My credit cards are declining, Michael added, panic creeping into his voice. Mom sank into her chair, looking suddenly older. How could you do this to us? The same way you've been doing it to me for years, I replied quietly. The difference is I'm giving you a chance to earn it back. More than you ever gave me. And if we refuse? Aunt Patricia demanded. I shrugged. Then the money goes to environmental conservation projects. Grandma Rose already approved the list. Elizabeth's legal mind was clearly racing. This is coercion. We could challenge. You could try, I agreed. But consider this. Every penny you spend fighting me legally comes from your own pockets now. Not the trust funds. How long can you maintain your lifestyles without access to Grandma's money? That shut them up. They all knew the truth. Their prestigious careers and expensive tastes were built on the foundation of those trust funds. Dad cleared his throat. When do we start? The volunteer work? I smiled. Your first shift is tomorrow morning. 7 a.m. sharp. We're rehabilitating injured sea turtles. On Boxing Day? Elizabeth looked aghast. Nature doesn't take holidays, sister dear. Neither does redemption. As the reality of their situation sank in, I saw something I'd never seen before in my family: humility. It looked foreign on their faces, like a dress that didn't quite fit. I have one more surprise, I said, reaching for my bag. Grandma Rose left each of you a personal letter. You can read them after you complete your first volunteer shift. I placed 5 sealed envelopes on the table. My family stared at them like they might explode. Merry Christmas. I stood up, smoothing my dress. I'll see you all bright and early tomorrow. Wear clothes you don't mind getting dirty. Wait, Mom called as I reached the door. You've had control of the foundation for months. Why wait until now to tell us? I turned back, thinking of all the family dinners I'd sat through since Grandma's death, listening to their continued jabs and jokes at my expense. Because, I said softly, I wanted to give you a chance to prove Grandma wrong. To show that you could be kind without being forced, that you could respect me without financial motivation. I paused. You failed. As I drove home that night, my phone buzzed continuously with messages from my family. Threats, pleading, attempts at negotiation. I ignored them all. The next morning, I arrived at the conservation center early to find them all waiting in the parking lot. Elizabeth in designer workout wear that would be ruined within hours. Michael in loafers entirely unsuitable for marine rescue work. Mom and Dad in matching casual wear that probably cost more than our monthly operating budget. Before we start, I announced, I want to be clear about something. This isn't about punishment. It's about understanding. Understanding what? Michael grumbled. That true worth isn't measured in dollars or status. It's measured in impact, in the difference you make in the world. I handed each of them a set of waders. Grandma Rose taught me that. Now it's your turn to learn. Over the next few months, something remarkable happened. Slowly, reluctantly at first, my family began to change. Elizabeth discovered she had a talent for rehabilitating injured birds. Michael's surgical precision proved invaluable in delicate rescue operations. Even Mom found purpose in organizing our community outreach programs. Their letters to Grandma Rose, when they finally wrote them, were surprisingly sincere. Dad's made me cry. 1 year later, we gathered again for Christmas dinner. The seating arrangement was gone. The conversation focused on achievements that had nothing to do with money or status. Elizabeth was doing pro bono work for environmental causes. Michael had started a program providing free surgeries for rescue animals. As I watched them interact, genuinely and warmly, I pulled out Grandma Rose's final letter to me, the one I'd never shared with them. My dearest Catherine, it read, money doesn't build character, it reveals it. Your family's wealth became their weakness, but your perceived lack of it became your strength. I'm trusting you with their redemption because you understand what they never did. That true worth lies not in what you have but in what you give. Love, Grandma. I looked up at my transformed family and smiled. Sometimes the most valuable trust fund isn't the one that fills your bank account, but the one that fills your heart with purpose. The trust funds. I unfroze them eventually, but by then something interesting had happened. My family didn't care about them as much anymore. They'd found something more valuable than money. They'd found themselves. Me. I kept managing the foundation, but with a new twist. Every major decision now required unanimous family approval. Not because I had to, but because I wanted to. After all, as Grandma Rose would say, the true measure of wealth isn't in controlling it, but in sharing it wisely. That Christmas dinner became our new normal. No more assigned seats, no more competition, no more measuring worth in dollars and cents. Just family, finally understanding what Grandma Rose had known all along. That sometimes, losing a fortune is the only way to find your true worth. Sunday dinners at Parker Manor had become an exercise in endurance. I picked at my mother's roast beef, watching my sister Olivia hold court at the other end of the table, her Harvard MBA practically radiating from her expertly highlighted hair. The merger is almost complete, she announced, adjusting her Cartier watch. Parker Industries will be under new management by the end of the month. Dad's legacy secured. I tried not to laugh at the irony. If only they knew who was really behind that merger. Who really controlled their precious family company's fate. That's wonderful, darling, my mother beamed. And how's the new penthouse? Perfect view of Central Park, Olivia preened. Though the mortgage is absolutely criminal. Thank goodness for my executive bonus. My father cleared his throat, turning his attention to me with that familiar look of disappointment. And what about you, Kate? Still playing around with that? What do you call it? High company, I said quietly, thinking of the empire I'd built while they weren't looking. Nova Digital Solutions. Olivia snorted into her wine glass. Company? Please. You post Instagram stories about entrepreneurship and call it a business. If she only knew that Nova Digital had become one of the largest digital transformation companies in the world. That while she was bragging about her penthouse view, I was orchestrating billion-dollar deals from my humble home office. It pays the bills, I said mildly. Bills. My mother's face creased with concern. Darling, you live in that tiny house in Brooklyn. Surely you could get a real job? Olivia could put in a word at Parker Industries. I thought about my tiny house. Actually a restored brownstone worth more than Olivia's penthouse. The home office where I directed global operations. The secure server room in the basement that helped run half of New York's digital infrastructure. I'm comfortable where I am. Comfortable isn't successful, my father lectured. Look at your sister, Vice President of Operations at 32. Following in my footsteps, making the Parker name mean something. The Parker name. Everything always came back to that. 3 generations of industrial success, now trying to survive in a digital world they barely understood. Not that they'd admit it. Someone has to carry on the family legacy, Olivia smirked. While others play entrepreneur on social media. My phone buzzed quietly. A message from my actual assistant, not the Instagram followers Olivia thought I spent my days counting. Final merger documents ready for review. Parker Industries board is getting nervous. At least I'm building something of my own, I said. Building what? Olivia laughed. A following of wannabe girl bosses? How many subscribers do you have now? 1,000? 2. I thought about Nova Digital's real numbers. Over 5,000 employees across 3 continents. Contracts with Fortune 500 companies. A client list that included governments and global corporations. And now, secretly, the company orchestrating Parker Industries' merger. Something like that, I murmured. Kate. My father's voice carried that heavy disappointment I'd known since childhood. You had such potential. Top of your class at MIT, offers from major tech firms. And you threw it all away for what? To be an influencer? I sat back remembering why I'd chosen this path. After graduating, I'd seen the future of industry, not in giant factories and corner offices, but in digital transformation and cloud solutions. I tried to tell them to show them how to adapt Parker Industries for the modern age. They hadn't listened. The world is changing, Dad, I said quietly. Business isn't just about physical assets anymore. Business is business, he declared firmly. Real business. Manufacturing. Distribution. Things you can touch. Not this internet nonsense. My phone buzzed again. Parker Industries stock down 12% since merger announcement. Board meeting tomorrow to discuss options. Speaking of business, Olivia sat up straighter. Did you hear about our latest acquisition? We're buying out our biggest digital competitor. Some startup that's been stealing our contracts. I hid my smile behind my wine glass. That startup was one of Nova Digital's shell companies, created specifically to pressure Parker Industries into this merger. Every contract they'd lost had been carefully orchestrated, pushing them toward this moment. Really? I asked innocently. What company? Atlas Tech Solutions, my father answered proudly. Paying a premium but worth it to eliminate the competition. Atlas Tech, named after my childhood cat, though they'd never make the connection. A company that existed only on paper, designed to make Parker Industries overpay for outdated technology. Interesting strategy, I said. You wouldn't understand the complexities. Olivia waved her hand dismissively. It's high-level corporate strategy, not Instagram stories about motivation. Probably true, I agreed, thinking of the real strategy behind this merger. How Nova Digital had spent 2 years positioning itself to acquire Parker Industries, using their own outdated thinking against them. I just wish, my mother sighed, you'd consider coming back to the family business. There must be something suitable, in marketing perhaps. I thought about tomorrow's board meeting. About the revelation that would shatter their illusions. About the moment they'd realize who really controlled their company's fate. Actually, I said carefully, I have some interesting business developments of my own coming up. Oh. Olivia's voice dripped condescension. Landing a sponsored post? Maybe a collaboration with some other wannabe entrepreneur. My phone lit up with another message. Miss Parker, urgent. Board members requesting early meeting. They're starting to realize Atlas Tech acquisition numbers don't add up. Something like that, I smiled. You might even hear about it tomorrow. Tomorrow? My father frowned. What's tomorrow? Just another day in the digital world. I stood up, gathering my things. Thanks for dinner, Mom. Leaving so soon? Olivia called after me. Hot date with your ring light? I paused at the door, taking in their faces one last time, my father's disappointment, my mother's worry, Olivia's smug superiority. Tomorrow everything would change. Actually, I said softly, I have some merger documents to review. The drive home in my Tesla, bought with Nova Digital profits, though they thought I still took the subway, gave me time to think. To remember every dismissive comment, every condescending smile, every lecture about real business. In my home office, I reviewed the final merger strategy. Parker Industries was hemorrhaging money, their traditional business model crumbling in the digital age. Tomorrow, they'd discover that Atlas Tech was worthless, and that their only salvation was a complete acquisition by Nova Digital Solutions. My phone lit up with family messages. Mom, darling, please consider what we discussed. Olivia, still time to get a real job, sis. Dad, the Parker name means something. Don't waste your potential. I set the phone aside, turning to the wall of screens where I monitored Nova Digital's global operations. Streams of data flowed across them, representing billions in digital transactions, thousands of employees, and one carefully orchestrated plan coming to fruition. Sometimes success doesn't look like corner offices and executive titles. Sometimes it grows quietly, hidden behind Instagram stories and dismissed ambitions, building something far bigger than anyone suspects. Tomorrow they'd learn that lesson the hard way. The Parker Industries headquarters stood exactly as it had for 3 generations, a towering monument to old money and traditional business. The same brass nameplate, the same mahogany-paneled lobby, the same air of fading grandeur. But today was different. Today everything would change. Ms. Parker, my assistant Jennifer greeted me in the private elevator, not an Instagram DM, but a Harvard Business School graduate who'd chosen Nova Digital over traditional corporations. The board is assembled. Your father is agitated. I smoothed my Chanel suit, a far cry from the casual clothes my family associated with my internet business. Have they figured it out yet? They know something's wrong with Atlas Tech. The numbers don't match their due diligence. But they haven't made the connection to Nova Digital. Perfect. Let them sweat a little longer. The top floor boardroom buzzed with nervous energy. Through the glass walls, I could see my father pacing, his usually immaculate suit slightly rumpled. Olivia sat at the table, frantically flipping through papers. Board members huddled in corners, whispering urgently. Ready? Jennifer asked, tablet in hand. I thought about every Sunday dinner, every dismissive comment, every lecture about real business. Oh yes. The room fell silent as I walked in. My father froze mid-pace. Olivia's papers scattered across the table. Kate. She managed. What are you doing here? This is a closed board meeting. Is it? I smiled, taking my place at the head of the table. I believe as CEO of Nova Digital Solutions, I have every right to be here. Nova Digital. My father's face went pale. What are you talking about? Jennifer stepped forward smoothly. Allow me to introduce Catherine Parker, founder and CEO of Nova Digital Solutions, the company currently acquiring Parker Industries. The silence that followed was deafening. Board members stared. Olivia's mouth opened and closed without sound. My father gripped the back of his chair for support. This is impossible, he finally managed. You run an internet business. Social media. No, Dad. I pulled up Nova Digital's corporate overview on the screens. I run a global digital transformation company, one that's been systematically positioning itself to acquire Parker Industries for the past 2 years. Olivia found her voice. But Atlas Tech is a shell company. I enjoyed watching the realization dawn on her face. One of several we created to pressure Parker Industries into this position. Every contract you lost, every digital client who disappeared, that was us. You've been deliberately sabotaging us? My father's voice shook. No. I've been showing you exactly what you refused to see years ago, that the business world has changed. That digital transformation isn't just internet nonsense. That the Parker name needs to evolve or die. The screens filled with data, Nova Digital's true reach, our client list, our market valuation. Numbers that made Parker Industries look like a small family business in comparison. $12 billion in annual revenue, I continued. Operations in 28 countries. Over 5,000 employees. And yes, an Instagram account where I post about entrepreneurship. Why? Olivia whispered. Why all the deception? Would you have listened otherwise? I met her eyes. When I tried to tell you about digital transformation, you called it a fad. When I suggested modernizing Parker Industries, Dad said I didn't understand real business. My father sank into his chair. The merger terms are non-negotiable. I distributed the final documents. Nova Digital will acquire Parker Industries at current market value, which I should mention has dropped another 15% since yesterday. We'll modernize operations, integrate digital solutions, and drag this company into the 21st century. And us. Olivia's voice was small. What happens to us? That depends. I leaned back, enjoying the role reversal. You can stay, learn how modern business actually works, adapt to the digital age. Or you can walk away with your shares paid out at market value. Your choice. A board member cleared his throat. Miss Parker, the numbers we're seeing here, your company's technology, is light years ahead of Parker Industries, I finished. While you were all focused on traditional manufacturing, we were building the future. While you dismissed digital transformation as a trend, we were revolutionizing entire industries. Your tiny house in Brooklyn, my father said suddenly. It's not really tiny, is it? I laughed softly. It's a fully restored brownstone worth $8 million. With a secure server room in the basement that helps run New York's digital infrastructure. But you never visited, so you wouldn't know that. And all those hours on social media. Olivia started. Were spent building relationships with global tech leaders. Managing international operations. Directing digital strategy for Fortune 500 companies. I smiled. The Instagram stories were just a bonus. And an excellent cover. Jennifer appeared at my side with more urgent messages. Nova Digital's stock was up on news of the acquisition. Tech blogs were already calling it the merger of the year. Old money meets digital innovation. The papers need to be signed today, I said, checking my watch. Before Parker Industries loses any more value. My father stood up shakily. You planned all of this. Every step. I learned from you, Dad. You always said business was about strategy, about seeing the bigger picture. I met his eyes. I just saw a bigger picture than you could imagine. The next hour passed in a blur of signatures and legal proceedings. Board members quietly congratulated me, finally recognizing who really held the power in the room. Olivia sat silently, her Harvard MBA suddenly seeming inadequate compared to what I'd built. As the last signature dried, my father approached my chair. Why didn't you tell us? He asked quietly. All these years. Would you have believed me? I gathered my things. When I tried to tell you the world was changing, you said I was chasing trends. When I saw the future of business, you said I was wasting my potential. So I stopped telling and started doing. And now you own our company, Olivia said from across the room. No. I turned to her. Now I'm saving our company. Dragging it into an age you refuse to acknowledge. Making the Parker name mean something in the modern world, not just in history books. That evening, I sat in my real office. Not the home setup they'd mocked, but the top floor of Nova Digital's Manhattan headquarters. The city sparkled below, a digital network of possibilities I'd seen long before they could. My phone lit up with messages. Mom, we had no idea. All this time. Olivia, can we talk? Please? I want to understand. Dad, you proved me wrong. About everything. I smiled, turning to the wall of screens showing Nova Digital's global operations. Success isn't always about corner offices and executive titles. Sometimes it's built quietly behind dismissed dreams and underestimated ambitions. Sometimes it grows in the very spaces others mock until it becomes too big to ignore. The next family dinner was different. No more lectures about real business. No more jokes about social media. Instead, they asked questions, finally ready to understand that the future they'd dismissed had already arrived. Olivia stayed with the company, humbled but eager to learn. My father stepped back, acknowledging that his understanding of business needed to evolve. My mother stopped worrying about my internet hobby and started bragging about her daughter, the tech suit. Me. I keep building, keep innovating, keep pushing the boundaries of what's possible in the digital age. Sometimes from my office, sometimes from my home setup. Because real power isn't about where you work, it's about what you create. The Parker name means something different now in business circles. Not because of 3 generations of traditional industry, but because one underestimated daughter saw the future and built it while everyone else was laughing. One digital transformation at a time.